Hi everyone, I'm Gary Null and I'd like to welcome you to this program. Today we have a lot of information I'm going to share, the latest in health and nutrition and healing. My guest in the second part of our program will be Keith Farnish, talking about Time's Up, an uncivilized solution to the environmental crisis. We've been waiting too long. Now it's going to get bumpy. I'm going to give you the newest information on why the swine flu vaccine and the regular vaccine are dangerous, unscientific, improperly tested, and nothing more than a huge experiment on the American public. A couple commentaries, if time permits. War and Peace Prizes by Howard Zinn. Obama, if you get Afghanistan wrong, it could derail your presidency. Here's how to get it right by William Polk of The Nation, and some other commentaries. Now, it's entirely possible I may have to leave partially into this program. I was down at the hearings this morning on the swine flu vaccine, making it mandatory in New York State. But then I saw I was number 33 in line to speak and give testimony, and all the pro-vaccine people are at the beginning, and the challenging ones like myself are at the end. So instead of sitting there for 5 hours, I came back to do the show, and also suggest people in the audience go down and support the people outside picketing. There are people outside with banners, a lot of nurses. The hearing room is mobbed. You cannot get in upstairs. But downstairs on the street you can, and there are some people down there showing signs, so get down and support them. They're at 225 Broadway outside. Easy to get to, and just join the other people who are there. Now let's go. Anyhow, if I do get a motion that I have to go, that means I have 35 minutes to get downtown, and I'll have to put on a program pre-recorded to cover. So if there's an interruption, you'll understand why. Let's go to the latest on health and healing information. Once again, another important study published in the Archives of General Psychiatry showing that a Mediterranean diet, and that's fairly much the diet that I advocate, except mine is higher in concentrates, vitamins, minerals. There are no vitamins and mineral supplements in the traditional Mediterranean diet. People just don't take them. But their diet is very good because it has a lot of natural antioxidants. They're not as stressed. They're more physically active. They're outside a lot. The social connections are important. Which brings me to just a little sidebar. Sometimes people are confused by labels. We call ourselves Republican or conservative. There was a time when if you were a Republican, it was considered the same as being conservative, or if you were conservative, you were Republican, Democrat, and liberal. And again, if you were a Democrat for a long period of time, it was considered you were liberal. Today, these are all meaningless terms because there's no single definition that applies. So you have Republicans who absolutely are not the same as conservatives, and conservatives who want nothing more to do with Republicans, liberals who are tired of Democrat title, and vice versa. I don't subscribe to any of these. I believe in just being independent and progressive in the philosophy, not as an ideology. Progressive meaning looking for what works, making all positive changes to assist and accommodate the truth of life. In that context, it was interesting because I tell people I watch 4 programs to see what issues they're handling, how they're handling them, how objective they are, or lacking in objectivity. And in all cases, I find that it's a combination. They can handle some issues objectively and others not. For example, on the subject of the swine flu vaccine, the information that would give you a sense of pause, that would say, hold on a second. We started with the idea that they're safe and effective, and nobody looked to prove, are they safe and effective? What were the studies that proved their safety and efficacy? We sent this information to Rachel Maddow, we sent it to Keith Olbermann, we sent it to Bill O'Reilly, Sean Hannity, and Glenn Beck. Guess who did an hour program on it? Was it Olbermann? No. The Democrats? No. We also sent it to all the liberal media. No, it was Glenn Beck. Now, where I would take strong umbrage with many of his ideas of a militarized approach to everything and supporting the military-industrial complex in America, on this issue, he came down on the side of truth. He said that there's a great deal of unanswered questions and there's a great deal of misinformation concerning the swine flu, and it's being promoted mainly for the benefit of the vaccine manufacturers. He's absolutely correct on that. Similarly, when it comes to family values, on family values, I would go towards the conservative because I believe in family values. I saw the benefit. My whole generation saw the benefit. Everyone I grew up with saw the benefit of having family. If you were fortunate enough to have a family that you could relate to, grow with, show your love with, argue with, all the things that made being a member of that family important. It created character. In time, I remember my father, I wasn't born yet. I was born after Second World War, but my father remembers that all of his brothers and sisters at one time had to come to live in our house. He was just a police officer and $3,000 a year salary back then, but they didn't even have that. And he remembers the importance of family. And later, when I was a teenager and would go to my great uncle's house where everybody congregated, he was kind of the quiet. He reminded me of John Wayne, tall guy, big guy, I guess about 6'5". He was an engineer. He was very practical, but he had an enormous amount of common sense. He never raised his voice, talked in a quiet voice, but it was just how he would look at you. You knew he was happy or unhappy with what you said. And he was very much a dynamic, but a very, very soft and very kind-hearted, soft in his disposition, but firm. And I remember a simple thing, finding a softball in an alley and bringing it home, and he was there that day, and as we sit down at the table, he said, where'd you get the softball? And I said, I found it in the alley. And then my father looked at my Uncle George, and then looked at me and said, did you buy it? I said, no. He said, someone did. I said, I guess. He said, no, don't guess. He said, do you believe that you deserve it because you found it? And I thought for a moment. I looked at my uncle, and he looked at me, and he gave me that look, a certain look, very intense. But again, very calm manner, and I said, no. My father just said, now tell us, Gary, the story of the softball, the lesson that you learned from it. And this is what my father did every day of my life. Sit down, Gary, Michael, we got to talk. He never said it to my older brother. That's the curse of being the middle son. My younger brother could get away with everything. My older brother, well, in my family, he was up in the clouds somewhere. You know, he couldn't do no wrong. But it was me that had to take all this. In retrospect, I'm glad he did this, though at the time I certainly didn't appreciate it. So then I had to tell a whole story about the lesson of the softball. And so I told him about the softball, and then my uncle said, the real lesson of your softball is that you should never profit at someone else's loss. If you learn how to profit at someone else's loss, you'll start to look at people as objects to manipulate. You'll find their weaknesses. You'll gain their trust. People will believe you, and then you'll exploit them. You'll look for how you can get ahead of the line without waiting in line. He said, do you want to be that person that profits at someone else's loss? And I said, no. He said, then remember the simple lesson of the softball. And so the next day, I had to go to every house in the neighborhood and knock on the door and say, did someone lose a softball? And sure enough, a guy down at the end of the block had lost the softball. Lesson learned, applicable to everything else in life. That's why I don't play in the stock market. That's why I wouldn't invest in commodities essential to life like oil, gas, water, food. Because to the degree that you win, someone else loses concomitantly. And there's something wrong with that.